Thanks so much for your time, Sipa. I'm sure it's very cold where you are, but we do understand that South Africa has secured a 130 billion rand offer for it just to transition from developed countries. But we do understand that this is, of course, still in the pipeline. Speak to us about that.
Indeed, I guess there was too much excitement when that announcement was made last week. You had world leaders, including the US President Joe Biden and the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, committing that South Africa will be helped. They are making that offer of about 130 billion South African rands in terms of assisting the country for its just transition process. Now, this is a process that will take years. Simply put, it's trying to encourage South Africa and other developing nations from moving away from high carbon intensive economy to the one that embraces clean renewable energy. So that offer was made last week. It's not a deal for now. South Africa has not secured a deal. It's a commitment, a political commitment that was made by political leaders of the world, particularly from the developed nations. They are saying to South Africa, we are willing to help you with 130 billion rand for your just transition process. Now, they are encouraging the country to embrace the issue of renewable energy, clean energy, moving away from coal and other things. But that will not happen overnight. We will not have a situation whereby South Africa will wake up and decide to dump one of its most precious resources, and that is coal. They cannot dump that resource for now, because if you look at the country's economy, it's been reliant heavily on coal. ESKOM, which is at the center of South Africa's economy, has been very crucial and has been relying on coal-fired power plants. But at some point, ESKOM in South Africa will have to move away from that heavy reliance and have an energy mix that embraces clean and renewable energy. That will take some time, but South Africa is in the process of that just transition. So here at COP26, you've got a delegation from South Africa led by various negotiators that are looking into the issue of just transition. This is a global conference. It happens every year under the United Nations. We'll have various countries coming together to pledge and make commitments, but most of those commitments in the past have not yielded any positive results. So in terms of this offer that has been tabled for South Africa, the real work begins now. It simply means you will have negotiators going back to the table, negotiating the terms and conditions of this deal. How is it going to work? How is it going to be administered? What are the terms and conditions? Earlier on, I interviewed Environmental Affairs Minister from South Africa, Barbara CREECY, who has arrived here in Glasgow as she's leading the South African delegation. She told me that it could take about up to 6 months to have this deal finalized in terms of the breakdown about terms and conditions, the structure of this offer. She says to me, if they are not happy with what is being offered, if they are not happy with the terms and conditions, they would not sign the deal. So she says they will look into South Africa's best interest and they will make an informed decision on the basis of what are the terms and conditions of this offer that has been put on the table. And that will have to include South Africa's national treasury in terms of structuring those terms and conditions of this offer that has been tabled for South Africa's just transition. And I guess that was one of the biggest talking points that came out of COP26 last week. So this is how it works. Usually for COP, or the United Nations Climate Change Conference of the parties, you will have the world leaders gathering for the first week. They will make all sorts of political statements and political commitments. Then the second week is the real conference week. So starting from tomorrow, that's when we expect that ministers of environmental affairs, negotiators and observers, advisors, policymakers will converge and they will start the real conference in terms of breaking down all the details, trying to come up with the final document known as the text, which we hope by the end of Friday would have been produced.
Yes, let's perhaps listen to that soundbite from the Minister, Barbara CREECY.
Well, obviously, the first phase is the pledge that the developed countries have made to us. Of course, now the real work begins. And we will be putting up a finance work stream. It will involve National Treasury, it will involve ESKOM, the IDC and other suitably qualified individuals so that they can advise the South African government in the course of negotiations what would be the best financial mix for us under what terms. Obviously, we are always concerned about the level of our country's indebtedness. We have to make sure that if there is financial support, it is coming at an affordable price. We also have to make sure that there are no onerous conditions imposed on our country. So far, there have been no onerous conditions imposed. And I think that we would obviously walk away from the deal if that were to be the case.
Siphamandla, we were earlier on in eMalahleni today, and that, of course, is a coal city. Its economy is based on mining. And I'm just curious to know what the minister has to say about if eventually coal is taken out and they agree to going away with coal, how this is going to affect thousands of workers in the mining and coal sector.
Of course, I think that's one of the biggest concerns currently in South Africa. You have a mining industry that employs a number of people. Thousands of South Africans are employed in the mining sector. And we all know that the country's economy has been heavily reliant on coal. Now, like I said earlier on, that the phasing out of coal will take years. It's not something that will happen overnight. This just transition, South Africa will need to look at it in its own best interest, but also taking into account other stakeholders as well. As you have mentioned about eMalahleni, it's a coal city and you've got thousands of people employed there in the mines. But now what it simply means is that you'll have to have a situation whereby the labor movement, the labor sector, together with business, together with the government, working together to ensure that workers are reskilled and upskilled so that when the transition takes over, they do not get left behind. They are part of the transition, but they get to be assigned other jobs that they will be able to do and to survive. Perhaps if we do have a bite from the minister, let's take a listen at that.
Unfortunately, we don't have that soundbite, Siphamandla, but I do understand that you've also been able to speak to the ESKOM CEO, who's also been attending COP26, and many South Africans would want to know when load shedding is going to end, but I'm sure he also has a significant interest in being there with regards to our coal-fired power stations.
Indeed. So ANDRÉ is attending COP26. It's not surprising that as the CEO of ESKOM, a very strategic power utility in South Africa and in the continent of Africa, by the way, is attending. His counterparts, other CEOs from various companies are attending. You are talking about the energy mix here, and you cannot talk about that in South Africa without ESKOM. ESKOM will be central in this just transition. Remember, ESKOM will have a situation years from now, many years from now, whereby some of its power plants, coal-fired power plants, will have to be decommissioned, and that will affect ESKOM in terms of revenue generation, but also thousands of jobs that will be lost as a result of that. So it's very important for ESKOM CEO to be here to negotiate and get an understanding, with other global partners in terms of how ESKOM will survive once this just transition takes place, because it has to take place. You need to have an energy mix and you need to move away from your high carbon intensive economy to a clean economy, and that is central because South Africa, by the way, will be forced, if the country does not adapt or adjust, it will have a situation whereby most of the products from South Africa will not be able to enter the global markets, and already the European Union is talking about high tariffs for products that are produced in countries that rely heavily on coal. So you will have a situation whereby South African products and companies will have to pay higher tariffs if they want to enter and penetrate the European Union market. So ANDRÉ is here to observe, but also to play a meaningful role in terms of the negotiations that are taking place, looking at various business opportunities here. Let's take a listen to what he said about his participation here, but also how this just transition will affect ESKOM.
This is not a sudden switch on, switch off. there will be a gradual move away from coal to low and no carbon electricity generation technologies. And for a very long period of time, at least 15 years and longer, South Africa will remain a very large consumer of coal. We have one of the most carbon-intensive economies in the world. Our carbon footprint per capita is 25% higher than that of China and double the global average. So we are significantly more carbon-intensive than our peers around the globe.
Sipamandla, maybe you have the answer to when load shedding is going to end. Maybe all the way from Scotland you were able to get some kind of clarity from the CEO of ANDRÉ, the CEO of ESKOM, ANDRÉ de Ruyter. Do you have any answers for us?
Unfortunately not, except to tell you that, well, you are in it for a very long time. He was non-committal when I asked him when is load shedding going to end in South Africa. Some people were mocking him here in Scotland, saying you are enjoying the lights in Glasgow, but back home we started off with load shedding. That is load shedding stage 2. We progressed to stage 4. He said to me, well, he regrets that we had to reach stage 4 load shedding, but he says that's because of the ailing infrastructure, and load shedding is essential to ensure that the lights are kept on moving forward. So he did not give me a clear answer. I asked him, when is this going to last for? He said to me, well, for now they are trying all they could to ensure that it doesn't happen, but there is nothing they can do. Let's take a listen to him.
I completely get that frustration. I'm very disappointed in our generation performance. It is not what we expect of our system. We simply have to do better. But I think if there is a strong argument to make for the rapid addition of additional capacity to our generation system, load shedding is probably the strongest argument that we can put forward. Not that we do it deliberately, but we need to add more capacity to the system as soon as we can. And that means gas, wind and solar. Those are the three sources of generation that we can quickly add to our system.
Thank you so much for that update, and we'll continue to cross to you, Sipamandla Goge, who's out in Scotland. Enjoy the constant electricity supply, because here in South Africa we still have load shedding.